Since I was blind since birth, I grew up without knowing the true value of sight. As Father told me, we lived in a simple ranch-style home on one floor. However, for me, I never needed to see to know where everything was located. I had a sense of spatial awareness, knowing where my bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, and living room were, and what textures were on each wall. Sometimes, visitors came to our house, but Father instructed me not to speak to them, as it would make him nervous. Despite his warnings, Ellie, a friendly visitor, still asked me my name, thinking I was disfigured when she saw my face. I always touched my face in these situations to try and understand why it was so different from theirs. When I asked to touch Ellie's face, Father walked in and furiously asked whom I was talking to. Like always, I lied and said it was nobody. He would punish me whenever I spoke to visitors because it scared him. When Father dragged me away, he usually tossed me around and threw me off balance, making me disorientated. Sometimes, he even left me outside, which was terrifying as I couldn't sense anything. Father warned me about the sound of the cars, saying they'd be the end of me if they touched me. Therefore, I relied on the sound of the cars to lead me back home. One night, Ellie whispered to me, but when I whispered back, she didn't hear me. I spoke to my father about Ellie and her inquiry about my face, but he refused to talk about her. He didn't explain why, and I could sense that he was not content when I told him that I wanted to touch her face. I later found out that we lived in a special place that had ties to the afterlife where spirits could pass through. My father disclosed that as I was visually impaired, I had the ability to tune in to the afterlife better than most. However, he warned me not to engage with dead people who might try to trick me and latch onto me forever in hopes of being alive again. He assured me he knew how to deal with them, but couldn't help if I became attached to them. A few years later, a lost spirit named Alex appeared to me pleading for my help. However, I couldn't say anything to her as I knew what would happen if I did. My father later asked me if I spoke to her, but I replied that I didn't. After that incident, I took necessary steps to avoid encounters with spirits, and it worked for many years until Sarah appeared. She begged me for help and wanted to see her daddy, but I told her I wasn't allowed to speak to her, even though it scared me to ignore someone in need. When the spirit claimed that my father was dead, I knew it was a trap. I refused to respond, hoping to make her go away. However, suddenly, the room started to shake, causing objects to fly across the room. I felt terrified as the shelves began to shake violently. The spirit continued to plead with me, begging for help to leave. Though I was scared, I decided not to talk to her and instead unlocked the front door, hoping that she would find her own way out. After a few moments, the banging and sounds subsided, leading me to believe that the spirit had left. I locked the door again and sat back down, feeling relieved yet still incredibly anxious. I listened intently for any sign of the spirit's presence. It was then that my father spoke to me, his voice low and weak, informing me that he was dying. I remembered his warning about the danger of talking to the dead and remained silent, hoping that he would survive. Rather than helping my father, I ran outside and started shouting for help. A kind woman approached me, asking me what had happened. I told her that my father was dying and begged for her assistance. She promised to help me, and I sat down on the grass waiting for her to return with help. As the wait continued, the sound of sirens approached, and a paramedic arrived on the scene. He started questioning me about my face, mainly asking about my eye injury. I told him that I was blind, and he began examining my eyes. His examination caused me immense pain as his fingers probed my face, wearing something that felt rubbery. Despite my discomfort, I tried to remain calm and answer his questions to the best of my abilities. Suddenly, I felt a sensation like something bright flashing inside my head, causing me to scream in agony. At first, I didn't understand what was happening, but soon, the paramedic started asking me about what I could see. When I told him that I couldn't see his fingers, he asked if I could open my eyes. I replied that I didn't know what he meant. Nevertheless, The paramedic continued examining me, instructing me to stay still. I felt his fingers on my face, which caused another bright flash, followed by sharp stabbing pain. I screamed as the paramedic tried to examine my eyes further, desperate for a solution. He attempted to calm me down. The woman gripped my hand tightly again. I was unsure of what was happening. I was receiving sensations that were indescribable. It was the same as always, but amplified by 100 times, making it all seem more real. I continued screaming as a hazy outline started emerging. "Just focus on your breathing, okay?" stated the paramedic. "Don't worry, everything is going to be all right." "When was the last time you had vision?" As my heart rate started decreasing and my breathing steadied, I became overwhelmed by what I was experiencing. The experience troubled me greatly, and I could not help but cry. "How long has it been?" he inquired once more. "I have never seen anything before," I responded. They instructed me to wear an eye mask for most of the day, only removing it at nighttime initially to allow my eyes to adjust. At the same time, I was handed over to my aunt and uncle, and I was not even aware of it first. They were taken aback by what had happened to me and that I had never attended school. The past few years have been like a roller coaster ride. The doctors had specified that I may not have perfect vision forever, but to me, what little sight I have is a blessing, and I'm willing to accept what I get. I have only recently started learning how to read and write, which is why I apologize if my English isn't perfect. It's only the best I can do. I've been questioning my aunt about my father's fate, but all she tells me is that he died as a result of a heart attack. I inquired about the kind of person he was, but she simply said that he was her brother and that she will continue to love him regardless. My uncle is not willing to discuss him at all. Recently, I have been spending a lot of time using the computer and enjoying browsing the internet. I cannot believe that something like the internet exists. After being so lonely for such a long time, now I can talk to anyone I want, whenever I please, even though I am cautious about it. After all, how do I know if the person I am conversing with is still living? Nobody else seems to share my father's concern about this. Today, while I was on a forum discussing the afterlife, I was thrilled to find individuals who were easy to relate to. Somebody sent me a link to an article about my father on a true crime website, despite my username being unknown to them. The article mentioned me by name, and they asked me if I was who they thought I was. According to the article, my mother had gone missing shortly after giving birth to me, and I was bound so I couldn't see. It claimed that my father had always wanted a daughter. They discovered 14 corpses in the basement, and one individual managed to survive, a young lady by the name of Sarah Frank. She was the one who contacted the police. Father's automobile was discovered hidden at the back of the dwelling. The authorities believe that he took his victims into the basement via the storm entrance and then left them there. After 4 days of continuous torture, Sarah agreed to pose as his daughter, and she was the only person to escape. She plunged him with a knife he had set on the counter to butter some bread. I didn't want to accept it, and I'm still not sure if I would have done so if the names of 2 of the victims, Ellie Farmer and Alex Riddle, hadn't stood out. I had conversed with both of them while they were in the living room. The only question that lingers in my mind is whether I conversed with Ellie and Alex before or after Father murdered them.